Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and today I'm taking you to the Jungle Cup, where an old meta titan from a past Great League meta makes its return to prominence, as it proves to be a devastatingly strong pick. Now this old meta titan is Claydol. Claydol, it never got nerfed. It still has the exact same moveset that it did when it was meta. Mud Slap, Rock Tomb, and Ice Beam. The difference is the Great League meta around it became so hostile that Claydol fell out of usage. However, in this Jungle Cup, Claydol honestly proved to be an amazingly effective safe switch. I paired it up with Shadow Gyarados and Quagsire, and had great sets in the 3100s. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and unfortunately in game number 1 we're off to a tough start, leading Shadow Gyarados into Stunfisk. I stay in to get big damage with an Aqua Tail safe switch into Claydol, and out comes the new Pokemon, Spidops. Spidops will be hitting Claydol for super effective damage, but this is where the bulk of Claydol and its coverage is very nice. Because not only am I able to tank moves from Spidops pretty well, but I can threaten big super effective damage with Rock Tomb. My opponent is forced to throw not one but 2 lunges, so they're forced to burn a ton of energy, and now I can send out Quagsire. Quagsire is going to be a wall to energy from Spidops, as they're typically running Rock Tomb and then either lunge or X-Scissor, so they will go for the lunge. I know that I will have to switch out of this matchup eventually. I accidentally overfarmed too much and played to a CMP tie that I do not win, so a misplay on my part, and now I will go for an undercharge on the Stone Edge. However, unfortunately I undercharge a little bit too much. Spidops is very bulky. But the moment Spidops throws, I'm going to be banking all of this energy for later and looking to snipe with the Gyarados. I know my opponent still has that Unova Stunfisk, and it does have quite a bit of energy, but the Stunfisk is already pretty low from having the Aqua Tail and that Mud Slap land. So I have a plan. I don't know if it's a good plan, but it's a plan. I'm going to try and Dragon Breath down a Unova Stunfisk, and Gyarados pulls it off. Gyarados exits with energy. I have back-to-back Aqua Tails, as in comes Scizor. Scizor takes huge damage from that Aqua Tail, and now I can fire off the Stone Edge. Unfortunately, the Bullet Punch did knock out, so I wasn't able to get my second move, but it's not going to matter. Quagsire able to make a second Stone Edge, knocking out the Scizor, and securing the Game 1 win. Hopping into the next match, we've got the Battle of Shadows, Shadow Gyarados versus Shadow Mightyenna. Anytime you see Shadow Mightyenna, you know there's going to be an alignment-dependent core in the back. The most common team behind a Mightyenna lead is going to be Wigglytuff plus Steelix. So the Mightyenna is always going to be staying in here, throwing the Poison Fang, and double shielding. But honestly, getting shields down should set up both Quagsire and Claydol incredibly well, as both of those Pokemon have incredible zero shield matchups. And that's part of why I felt this team had really nice synergy, was the Gyarados is usually where I'm going to be spending either one or both of my shields, and then once Gyarados has exhausted those shields, my back Pokemon can function really well without them. Here my opponent makes a pretty nice play, anticipating that I was going to throw one before their crunch, so they end up just throwing the Poison Fang to get a little bit of damage. Mightyenna is finally knocked out, and in the back is Wigglytuff. And if we've seen a Mightyenna, we've seen a Wigglytuff, it's highly likely there's a Steelix in the back. Earthquake is going to land, that's big damage onto the Wigglytuff. Wigglytuff will be able to secure the knockout, and now I'm going to be sending in Claydol to go for the full farm down. The Wigglytuff should have just enough HP to make it to an icy win, and I will be putting up the shield. This means that I'm now going to be debuffed for the remainder of the match, and in the back, it is going to be the Steelix. My Claydol moveset is Rock Tomb plus Ice Beam, so I can only hit for neutral damage with my charge attacks, but I will go for the Rock Tomb first, because I'm well aware of the fact that I'm one stage attack dropped, and that means that my Mud Slaps don't hit as hard as they typically would. So I wanted to ensure that I could guaranteed survive that crunch, and now look for an Ice Beam into a farm down. I did consider running Scorching Sands, but I felt that Ice Beam and the ability to threaten Altaria with big double super effective damage would make it worthwhile. Unfortunately, we run into another Stunfisk lead in the next match. I save switch this time immediately into the Claydol, and my opponent is going to respond with Fearow. This is not a response to Claydol whatsoever, so we're already off to a really good start. However, I honestly feel that I misplayed. I think I should have stayed in against the Stunfisk lead like I did in game number 1 and gone for the Aqua Tail, because Stunfisk love to no-shield there, and getting a ton of damage on that Stunfisk early on is very valuable. But speaking of value, look at Claydol. I didn't have to use a single shield, they have to double shield, and now I can just bring in the Shadow Gyarados. Gyarados is going to look to farm up energy, they pivot, and in the back, it is Togekiss. Togekiss going to be instantly met with an Aqua Tail. Aqua Tail will do quite a lot of damage. My Gyarados unfortunately gets outpaced by one turn, and that is where throwing on alignment with the first Aqua Tail actually ends up backfiring. My opponent's on Ancient Power, which is a really interesting choice. I guess Ancient Power and Aura Sphere, I will be able to take the knockout, but because I didn't throw an Aqua Tail earlier on at the Stunfisk is still very healthy, and they're outside of Earthquake range. So when they bring back in the Stunfisk, I need to stay in, taking Thunder Shocks, which is quite a lot of damage, before I send in the Quagsire. Back in comes the Furo. Furo did end up resetting their debuff, and if I shield a Drill Run, I should be able to outpace, but they end up baiting with the Drill Peck, and that's going to allow them to now connect with a Drill Run. Drill Run lands, that's big damage. I'm going to overfarm as much as I possibly can because I just need to ensure that I can make it to this Earthquake. I have taken quite a bit of damage. It all comes down to this. Can I survive the Mud Bomb? Mud Bomb lands, Claude hangs on, but I get Thunder Shock down, and unfortunately, we are going to lose a heartbreaker of a game. We move to the next match and get a great lead. Shadow Gyarados into Crustle. My opponent save switches into Furret. What I should do in this matchup is throw the Aqua Tail, and then once I'm able to land it or get a shield, then bail into the Quagsire. But this was one of my first games with the team, so I decided to stay in for a bit, and honestly, I feel like it would have worked a lot better if I just threw the Aqua Tail, and then whether they shielded or not, just brought in the Claude. Because Furret can win the 2 shields against Quagsire, but if you're able to get big damage on the Furret or get a shield advantage, then Claude will be able to clean up. Nevertheless, I eventually send in Quagsire, they bank a bunch of energy on Furret, and out comes Stunfisk. Stunfisk shields up the Earthquake, but unfortunately Quagsire is just so far ahead that I'm guaranteed to make an Earthquake anyway. So they were able to stop the first Earthquake, but unfortunately there's a second Earthquake locked and loaded. This Earthquake is going to be getting them deep into the yellow HP, and now my goal is just to stay in here, tank a move, and then I can look to get aggressive. The Mud Bomb is going to land, there's the switch to Claydol, and Claydol will immediately be chipped with the Mud Bomb. This will allow my opponent to switch out of this matchup, and back in comes the Crustle. These Fury Cutters are adding up. The question is, can Claydol hang on? There's the X-Scissor. Claydol barely hangs on 1 HP. I think that was damage registration error. So a bit of good luck does go my way as that Fury Cutter does knock out. And because of that, we're actually going to be able to take this win. In comes the Stunfisk. Stunfisk will get knocked out by the Aqua Tail, and my opponent needs 3 charge attacks, and they're just too low. They can't ever get to 3. So Furret will be able to take the knockout with the Swift, but then I can bring in the Quagsire, make the Stone Edge, and my opponent will resign the match. Great lead in the next match, Shadow Gyarados into Shadow Marowak. My opponent save switches into a Bullet Seed Credilli, and this time, I actually play it a lot better. I feel like this is a pretty similar play pattern to what I should have done versus the Furret, although I would have chipped the Furret before switching in. But in that last game, it almost cost me. I stayed in way too long. So this game, we're going to try and play it just that little bit better. Now my opponent actually ends up throwing on alignment, which should allow me to throw 1 in the Stone Edge, and then throw 4 in the Stone Edge and barely outpace. The one thing I do not want to do, however, is give a big farm down to the Marowak, so I'm just going to aggressively pivot into the Gyarados. In the back, they have a Volt Switch Fortress, and that is a little bit unfortunate. Shadow Gyarados, even though I'm getting shredded by Volt Switches, will still be able to get to back-to-back Aqua Tails. So at bare minimum, I get a shield, and I do get big damage, and now I get to send in the Claydol. I'm expecting they're not going to bait, so I will put up the shield just to immediately shield a Rock Tomb. Earthquake wouldn't even do that much damage, which is why that shield is a very unfortunate one. They're going to bank some energy and send in the Marowak, and Marowak will take some pretty substantial damage from Ice Beam. Marowak will fire off the Bone Club, and unfortunately, because I'm debuffed due to the Rock Tomb, I'm not going to get the farm down. So, it's time. The Sack Swap onto the Quagsire. This allows me to keep my shield intact for this Claydol and all this Claydol energy. My opponent brings back in the Fortress, going to be firing off the Rock Tomb. They need to get to a second Rock Tomb, and unfortunately, they just do not have the energy in reserve. Claydol gets to the back-to-back Rock Tombs, first gets the shield, second will be able to take home the win. Honestly, I feel like today, I didn't even play particularly well, but the team was very strong. I believe I went 10-5 overall with this particular squad. We move to the next match, Shadow Gyarados into Furo. Now, I'm pretty happy to catch this on the lead, because Gyarados will have a pacing advantage. The thing to watch for in this matchup will be the Gyarados' health bar. Peck does significantly more damage over time than Dragon Breath. So even though I'm able to outpace, my HP bar is getting absolutely deleted. So I will go for a second Aqua Tail. They're going to put up the final shield, and now I have a choice to make. Do I invest in the Gyarados? I don't have great fast move pressure into this Pokemon in the back, so I will invest in the Gyarados to secure this knockout. I think just getting rid of this Pokemon will hopefully allow me to do well in back, and there's now a Shadow Scizor without shields. This is great news for me. Clodsire going to farm up. My opponent switches into Gastrodon, and this is actually a problem, as Gastrodon is going to be pretty strong into both the Claydol and the Clodsire. Water Pulse lands, that's big damage. And here, I will actually go for the Rock Tomb. Rock Tomb plus the Mud Slaps will still put them into Earthquake range, so I just wanted to try and limit the amount of damage that I would take from the singular Mud Slap on the Clodsire. Clodsire will take the knockout with the Earthquake, and back in comes the Shadow Scizor. This is going to be a race to the finish. Can Clodsire outpace here? It's going to be close, and I cannot. Unfortunately, I can't get to the Earthquake. It would have been a Charge Attack priority tie, and Stone Edge does not KO. I think genuinely I played this game pretty poorly. What I could have done is just throw the Earthquake instantly into the Gastrodon and then pivoted into the Claydol and been fine. But unfortunately, I did not, and that ends up costing me the win. We move to the next match, picking up a great lead, Shadow Gyarados into Shadow Quagsire, and my opponent is going to be safe switching into Shadow Scizor. Shadow Scizor, in this matchup, they're always going to be going for Trailblaze, because how you win it is by boosting up your attack. However, being up one turn as Shadow Gyarados, as long as you have a high rank, and mine is a pretty okay rank, you should always be able to win the twos just barely. It's not going to be by much, but Gyarados should be able to make this Aqua Tail. My opponent realizes it, and they're going to get a catch onto the Quagsire. Quagsire will take quite a bit of damage, and now I send out Claydol. Claydol is so bulky, and even in a bad matchup, I'm still able to get some pretty consistent fast move damage. The one unfortunate thing is I cannot farm down, so I will need to throw the Rock Tomb, but overall, this does allow me to keep a fully healthy Clodsire in the back, and I have some energy stored on this Claydol. In comes Togekiss. If they're Aura Sphere and Psyshock, I actually wall off their energy. They make a catch onto the Shadow Scizor, but unfortunately for them, I just have a Clodsire in the back. So my opponent was in a bit of a weird spot, where even though my Claydol was pretty low, I actually wall both Psyshock and Aura Sphere, so they were forced to throw away the Scizor, and now they just can't do enough damage to the Clodsire because it's too bulky. The bulky backline is just such a really good complement to a Shadow Gyarados lead, as Stone Edge will easily be knocking out that Togekiss, and we're able to take home the win. Shadow Gyarados into Lantern. Now this might seem scary, but Lantern in this cup should be on Water Gun. So it is very important to stay in this lead and check the fast move, because if it's Water Gun, you don't really want to be switching one of your ground types into it. And Shadow Gyarados beats Water Gun Lantern as long as there are shields in play. Like, Lantern has already been absolutely destroyed by this damage, and they now pivot into Shadow Abomasnow. This is a bit of an uncomfortable Pokemon for my backline. Both Claydol and Clodsire are bulky enough to absorb any one charge attack, but I'm already down a lot of energy, so I'm just going to stay in with the Gyarados. Gyarados will be shielding up the Weather Ball, farming up a ton of energy, and going for yet another Aqua Tail bait. This bait is going to be shielded. They look for the farm down, and they do not get it. Shadow Gyarados. It's been the Claydol show so far, but this is all Shadow Gyarados. And now in comes Shadow Talonflame, and I have a Pokemon with Stone Edge and a Pokemon with Rock Tomb. So at this point, there's just no way out. In comes Lantern. Claydol gets the Mud Slap down. In comes Talonflame. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. We've got the Battle of Flyers in the next match. Shadow Gyarados into Altaria, and this is a critical error. As the Gyarados, you should never throw your Crunch before their Sky Attack, because the only shielding scenario Altaria wins is the zeros. Instead, you should hold on to your energy and actually overfarm a ton of energy and then only throw the Crunch when it can knock out, because that way they can't do what they did, which is grab a shield advantage and then switch out. The good news is I have a very strong check to Dunsparce with Claydol, but I'm still kicking myself because I really misplayed that lead matchup, and that gives my opponent an advantage that they really shouldn't have. My opponent actually makes a really smart play here. They do not throw their energy. I was waiting for them to throw because they are debuffed, but they realize that I get to 100 energy before they do, so they can just keep farming up, and I will eventually have to throw. In comes Altaria. Altaria will get knocked out, and in comes Shadow Scizor. I have so much energy loaded on this Gyarados. Gyarados will now get to start peeling away the shields. There's Aqua Tail number 1. They're going to be returning fire, and I need this energy, so I will be shielding up the Night Slash. Luckily, no Night Slash boost this time, and after getting the final shield, it's going to be the Quagsire show. In comes the Quagsire. Shadow Scizor is going to be spamming out charge attacks. They have a ton of energy on that Dunsparce. Trailblaze is going to land, farming up to the Stone Edge, and look at that. They wait the turn and get the CMP sack swap to instantly doom me and win that game. What an unbelievably good play by my opponent. In this game, honestly, they were just the better battler. I made a lot of misplays at the start, and they make an insane play at the end to secure the win. Hopping into the final match, and man, I really feel like I need some redemption because I have not been on my A game battles-wise so far. The team has been winning, but I really feel like sometimes I can win kind of almost impossible situations by making crazy plays. In this video, it really feels like it's the team that's doing a lot of the hard work here. Gyarados will more than happily grab both shields, and then it's time to send out the Claude. Claude is just where Mightyenna energy goes to die. Crunch, especially a Shadow Crunch, will add up on most Pokemon, but Claude can actually tank that. So I will farm up and throw this Stone Edge right before they're able to make it to their next Crunch. So Stone Edge will pick up the knockout. They're going to be sending out a Talonflame, and this is not an answer to a Quagsire. I was expecting Wigglytuff Steelix again, but I guess it's not that. They just get one shot by a Stone Edge. In the back, there's the Wigglytuff we were expecting. Wigglytuff gonna take big damage from the Earthquake, and one final time, it's Claydol time. Claydol hits the field. They're gonna go for an icy win, but it just simply does not matter. The damage has been done. Claydol gets the farm down. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. All in all, I really enjoyed getting to use Claydol once again. It was a Pokemon that I really liked playing when it was Open Great League meta, and the fact that it fell off was a little bit unfortunate, but I feel like its combination of debuffs, obviously Mudslap still being incredible, and the bulk makes it a really good core pairing with the Shadow Gyarados. The Shadow Gyarados is an incredibly strong Pokemon when you're able to invest shields into it, as it can just outpace, outspam, and really do a whole lot of damage. So having Pokemon in the back, like a Claydol, like a Quagsire, that are so good in the zero shields, that really don't need that Protect Shield investment, can really set up the Shadow Gyarados for success. I mentioned it in the commentary, but I really feel like battles-wise, I was not on my A game. You might be able to hear it in my voice, but I am currently overcoming a little bit of sickness. It's nothing serious, but I definitely feel like today was an off day for me, but I still wanted to record this because I feel like the team was really good, and honestly, the fact that I wasn't able to play particularly well and still won, I feel like showed that it is a pretty strong team as well. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy watching content like this, please do consider leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you, as always, to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is genuinely so appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.